All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Well, it's no surprises. Bitcoin has dumped nearly 6% on the day, getting rejected at $102,000 as we have been watching here on the channel. Some altcoins are also finding themselves in a roughly weak position, and the overall cryptocurrency market cap has also had a significant correction. Last time these signals showed up, we saw very significant corrections, ranging from 30% up to 80% on the markets. However, it might all sound like doom and gloom, but it's definitely not what I'm here to present to you. There are still signs that the macro cycle is still intact. We're still looking for further upside. However, the short term is following the signals that we have been presenting here on the channel for uncertainty, downside, and potential opportunity. Make sure you hit the like button on the channel and the videos. Subscribe if you are new here. Thanks again for joining us. If you are a returning subscriber, you guys will know by now that each of the videos builds upon the previous day's analysis. So don't miss out on the analysis. Otherwise, you'll miss out on the overall picture. We're going to cover Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, and the real estate cycle. It's your home of macro cycle analysis. Here is our agenda. Plenty to get through today, so I won't waste too much time going through bit by bit. Yesterday, we did have some pretty significant topics to discuss, so I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this one. Let's first crack on with a couple of, the headlines floating about in the last 24 hours. I'll make it very, very quick for you. Fed officials signal more gradual approach to lowering rates in 2025. Plenty of articles on that over the last 24, 48 hours, and even as the decision was made last year to drop the rates. Now you can see that the rates overall are looking like a pause for the next 3 meetings. And once we get to June, there could be a cut there, but just a slight cut of roughly 25 basis points. Most of the probabilities suggest that that will then remain on pause throughout the year. So we're looking at somewhere between sort of 4 to 4.5% for the US interest rates. And if you followed my 2025 market predictions, I suspect there will be some sort of rate increases. Whether that happens at the end of the year or 2026 is yet to be decided, but I think we will see some rate increases before the end of the cycle. Here it is, the 18.6-year cycle. As we head to the peak of the cycle, asset prices typically increase. We also see commodities increase, obviously being assets, and things just become a lot more expensive, therefore increasing inflation. And potentially they'll have to start raising the interest rates to combat that type of inflation. That's typically what occurs towards the end of the cycle. Now, the other thing that we have seen over the last 24 hours is the job openings. There's a lot of news articles around this being a reason for why the markets have dropped. We saw the S&P 500 go down. We saw the NASDAQ go down, the Dow Jones. Bitcoin has obviously dropped off. And they're referencing back to job openings being one of those major criteria as to why the markets had fallen. Nonetheless, we'd already been picking up on signals that the market was weakening at this point. We saw that back when it was unable to get past the 50% levels. But of course, with Bitcoin and cryptos, we saw the 3-day down signal. I'll get to that in a moment. But if we are looking for, if the markets are going to show further downside from here, yet remain in a macro bull market, being that this is just a regular or healthy correction, where are those levels? Well, if you've been following, they haven't changed. If you are new, we're looking at 56 to 5,700 for the S&P 500. So looking at here, the E-mini futures contract. To the downside, the August 2024 low seems unlikely that it'll be broken. So it seems unlikely that the price will get back to 5,000 to 5,100 points, yet remain in a macro bull market. So to the downside, we now have a weekly swing. It's not confirmed yet for a lower top. You can see here, this is the down bar, inside, down, and then a little up bar to turn the swing around. So if I remove this, you'll be able to see that on the yellow chart there, the yellow line, up, down, up. And if we get next week, this week closes here, and next week breaks lower than the previous week, that will then confirm lower highs. And we haven't seen a weekly lower high. We have to go all the way back to roughly July, August of 2024. So that would be coming up to about 6 months before we saw the trend turn down. As you can see now, everything is still green. We still have a weekly up, weekly 2-bar up. Now the daily chart is very much undecided. We don't have a clear trend on the daily chart for the 1 day. The 2-bar is down, and as I showed before, the weekly is up. So for now, it seems like the market is pretty much in that churning phase. And if we're looking for further downside, or if the market does happen to give us that further downside, the support levels are coming in at, well, the first one, the closest one is 59.25, and that's the 50% level of the extension here. So this is for those trading ranges to the downside. The 100% at 5,800. And so all I'm looking for here is if we get to any of these levels that marry up with our other 50% levels, is that you're looking at a price cluster, right? And so if you get this price cluster of multiple prices coming together with extensions, and you could look at it, say, with moving averages. If you had multiple coming together, it gives a stronger case that the market might find support at those levels. So if we do get a breakdown here, you can bet your bottom dollar that you're going to see further fear come into the markets. People will probably freak out. I've already started seeing calls that this is the top. The market's found its final cycle top. I do not believe that whatsoever. And the charts have not suggested that yet. It's far, far, far too early to suggest any of those because you haven't got any of the macro or the longer term timeframes. The higher term timeframes haven't turned. So it's very much impossible to say that that is the end here. To the downside, as I said, 56, 57, coming out at support, coming out at 50%, and also coming out at the extensions for the short sellers looking for any of those profit targets to the downside. MicroStrategy. I had a couple of comments yesterday when it actually ran up 11.5%. Now it's right back down. Those people will definitely go quiet once again. All the analysis is suggesting is MicroStrategy is possibly putting in its top, and over the course of this year, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be, maybe you'll get a similar pattern to last time. So maybe the crash has already occurred and it's basically just trying to find its legs now. The high to the low, you had a 47.5% crash from the top to the bottom. So the crash has occurred, and those tops all came in lower than the Bitcoin tops, just like last cycle so far. It had its top in February 21, then April 21, then November 21, whereas Bitcoin topped in November 21, putting in its higher high. These are all higher highs for Bitcoin. They're all lower highs almost for MicroStrategy. So it's yet to be decided here if it can get past $420 to $450. That is this level here and these tops here, then it's in a much stronger position to tackle that all-time high. But until then, you can fight over whether it's going anywhere. It looks like it's basically in a trading range until either 280 breaks or $420 break. 420, get bullish. Do whatever the hell it is you want to do. Breaks under 280, probably time to start getting a little bit more bearish in that sense. So that's where we sit at the moment when we look at the 18.6 year cycle. The uncertainty seems to be building at the moment, but doesn't mean the cycle is over yet. I think that's probably healthy at this point as more money comes back into the play. This is what I posted on X yesterday. If you're not following, definitely do that. Links is in the video description. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a Telegram. I don't have a WhatsApp. Don't talk to anyone on those services so that you're not getting scammed out of your own money. X here, looking at Wall Street and what they are expecting, what they are forecasting, I guess, for 2025, after we already had a bull market in 2023, or an up year, 25%, and 2024 was also 24, 25, 26% increase. Now you're starting to see all the smart money coming on board and giving us higher and higher prices. Tom Lee from FundStrat, it's obviously been one that's been bullish for the whole time. Probably a couple of others in there, but the majority of these folks were all expecting lower prices in 2022, 2023. They weren't very strong in 2024, and now they're starting to show higher prices here. 7,000 year-end target for the S&P 500. Currently, S&P 500 is roughly around what we looked at, 6,000 or 5,900, right? And so the average here is 6,600. This, to me, is all leaning into the volatility that is going to continue to increase through these next year or two. Maybe it goes on a little longer. The reason being is that now more people are seeing that it's a bull market, more people are bringing their money in, and they're all going to keep trying to catch the tops. As I said here, I think they're going to get skittish with their money. They're going to keep pulling it out quicker, putting it back in quicker, and that's how you get those volatile swings. One area that is continuing to show strength are commodities. Obviously, end of the cycle, we're seeing further prices increasing for metals. And we're also seeing it for energies, which is something that I talked about with the inflation here. Oil has also continued up. You look on the daily chart here. This is on the back of the rest of the markets going down. the reason I'm watching this, and then I'll get to the Bitcoin and the cryptos as well, is that we're still seeing signs of the markets going up. That's all part of this here. We are here, winner's curse. Within this winner's curse, you see the commodities generally go up if the commodity cycle is also in an uptrend. Story for another day. But we're also seeing infrastructure spending. We're seeing lots of money being thrown out there by the government, and I suspect, hasn't been confirmed yet, we obviously have Trump coming in, I suspect there's going to be more floating around in 2025 that's going to continue pushing the prices up. And a look at the US dollar is also showing relative strength here, with yesterday going up, got 108.5, currently having a bit of a pause at the 150% extension of the double bottom. So here was the low, that was after our 3-day rule, so 3 strong days up. It's worked very, very well on the US dollar. So if you're trading the USD and you're using the rules there, hopefully you're making some pretty good gains. Double bottom, the push higher, you saw at the moment anyway, there's a bit of a rejection at 105. If we keep going, we have a very strong level there around 112 and 112.8. So that's pretty much the areas that I'm looking out for next, should this break through that 109 level for those next resistance levels for the US dollar. Okay, so that's a broad look at the economy so far. With Bitcoin, we obviously saw a pretty significant day down, 5% there. The fear and greed index is still just sitting in greed. It's had a day or two back up in extreme greed. Overall, I would like to see it reset. I'd love to see it come back into neutral, or even into the fear, like it's done in the previous cycle, like it did in the cycle before that. Often when it gets into that extreme greed, you can see each of those times, it does flush back to at least neutral, often fear. So we can take this back as far as it gives us the data. Here it is, 2019, touches extreme greed, even here in May 2019, and it got a flush out back to fear. So remember, we're just looking for neutral, even into the fear would be great, but it just gets to neutral. Extreme greed, yes, it hits fear, which is the yellow and orange. All you're looking for is, does it go to dark green, and then does it drop back to the yellow or the orange? Here, dark green, drops back to orange. Dark green, drops back to orange. Dark green, drops back to orange. Dark green, touches yellow, touches dark green again, then back to orange and red. Dark green, back to, well, in this case, it got to red. Dark green, in this case, gets to red, and that was your bear market. Then 2023, we didn't get any dark green hits until, or dead on there, so January, exactly 12 months ago. I think barely just touched it at 76. So that's where it hits the extreme greed, and it drops back to yellow, almost an orange, dark green, touches orange, dark green, touches orange. Here was a light green, still touches red here. That was in August. What have we done so far? We've hit dark green for several days now. We have not reset to a yellow or an orange. Any times in the past that we have just remained in dark green and never hit the orange or the yellow, not that I can recall, not that I can see with the data that we've got here. This is for the fear and greed index. This is what we just had over the last 24 hours. It dropped back to 70. So if I'm taking the probabilities say 100% of the time, it will at least get back to yellow. So that's a reset there, back to yellow. And often the argument comes up is that don't use the fear and greed index here. Don't use this crypto fear and greed index. It's no good. Go and use the coin market cap fear and greed index. I don't necessarily want to choose one or the other. It's good to keep an eye on both. This one has been the most reliable, even when a lot of people, including myself, thought it was unreliable through this section of the market. So 2024, that was when we only saw a touch into fear here. Basically, it was the dump on the 1st of May, and obviously the readings on the 2nd. Once the day closes, opens on the 2nd, and then you get your reading. And from that point, people thought, well, that's it. We had enough, because on CoinMarketCap, it was lower down in the fear. I think it even hit extreme fear at that point, but it wasn't ready yet. It ran higher, touched extreme greed again, and then you got the dump into July. Then you got the dump into August. You got the extreme fear multiple times there, great opportunities underneath $60,000, and then the market ran higher. So, of course, this time can be different. it can be slightly different. We can have a rhyming here where we have hit green and dark green drops into light green. And then maybe we do go higher and this continues on for a bit longer. You know, you get this reading here, it just sort of tracks around and the market's heading up. Everyone's getting greedy. And then over the next couple of weeks, you do get that flush out. Either way, the way I look at it is the risk reward is probably, not guaranteed, but it's probably not great from this point, especially if something like that happens. Because the risk is further downside. The reward, I think, is not much upside. Not much upside. 110, 120,000 for buying at 96. Maybe you're making 20%. But that's not how the crypto markets work. People aren't looking for a 20% to potentially lose 20 or 30% to the downside. A one-to-one is probably not great in crypto because of the extreme risk that's involved. Most people are kind of looking for at least a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, sometimes 5-to-1, even 10-to-1. Of course, we can have the 100-to-1s, but just keeping a little bit more conservative here, that's what it means by the risk and reward. You can look to these upsides. Guaranteed, if it got to 105, 110,000, people say, absolutely wrong, you're ridiculous, you know, we're making tons of money. No, you're not. It's 97,000, it gets to 110, it's only 10K, it's only 10%. And you only say, I say only 10% because the downside could be 10, 20% from those points. So it's not great risk reward. That's what that means there. So in terms of this signal here, hitting the green, the dark green, every single time it's dropped back to at least yellow, being neutral. Most often it hits at least orange. So it hits some sort of fear. Okay, so not only that, we have another couple of signals to look at as well. But first I want to have a look further into the sentiment. Bitcoin and crypto on Google Trends here, looking relatively okay. It's all been trading all right. So basically, short term, seems like there should be more downside, but the price can trade around. It can go between $90,000, $108,000, maybe even slightly higher. That can still happen in the short term. Short term, you want more specifics, weeks, okay? Can be in the weeks. The search volume is still fine. We haven't gone below the search volume of October 2024, which on the chart was back here. So these are at those higher lows before the market took off. So the interest is still there. Started to track up a little bit here on crypto, and Bitcoin's basically flatlined for the last couple of days. Things are still looking all right on that side. The liquidations have been flogged in the last 24 hours. The longs got destroyed, about $500 million, a little bit on the short side here. So it's good to see some of the market getting flushed out. And over to the short term and the signals here, we had the 3-day rule, and I stopped short of saying 3 days down because this rule can apply to the up days as well from significant turning points. And there was one back here just a few days ago. You had an up day, inside, up, and up, giving you that 3 days up. However, this I would class as a much stronger turning point because it was the all-time high, whereas this is maybe just another Monday. We don't know yet, hasn't been confirmed. So I'd still be putting more weight on the 3 days down from this point. And so far, that's exactly what has happened. And from the top, we are now at 22 days from the all-time high price. So basically from that 3-day signal, the market has been underneath the old all-time high for 22 days. This is the longest correction since breaking out, since that Trump pump of the US election. Therefore, the rule is doing its job. It's doing its job by keeping us safe on the right sides of the market, not getting too crazy with it. We got the rejection yesterday. That was that pump out and then rejected bang on $102,000, $103,000 and crashed back under 50%. So in terms of that 3-day rule for crypto, for Bitcoin, I should say, it dropped 33.5% when that rule came in. There you go. There's 33.5%. For the total crypto market cap, you had the 3 days there. It dropped 37, nearly 38% from that top. And we saw that recently too, 1 to 3 days down. Yes, it's green. I did this the other day for anyone who was a little bit stumped by the greens and the reds. Just turn them all to white and you can see much, much clearer that the days down were all lower highs, lower lows. That's what you're looking for here. Lower highs, lower lows. So that has already played out, and a similar-ish pattern has started to form there. You can see the bottom came out. You got the top forming here, maybe we go on another test, but a rejection possibility. There was some higher lows. There was another retest of those prices. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the market chop around a little further from this point. Am I saying that we must get another 144 days to a low? Definitely not. Am I saying we need 237 days until we break out to a new all-time high? Definitely not as well. The 50% levels are the key areas I'm still watching here for any sort of price dumps to support levels. And for the total crypto market cap, the closest one here are obviously those lows at 3.1 trillion, but the 50% is at 2.96 trillion. For BTC, you've got the lows there at 91, the 50% level at 87,500. And if we take this all the way back to the August low, still all the way back there at $78,700. But one step at a time. There is the critical support levels that we're still watching around that low 90s to the mid 80s. USDT dominance has also had an up day breaking past that downtrend. So similar pattern to what happened in 2021. Obviously, we're tracking this day by day. Earlier on, it was almost unbelievable that it could pause here, basically pausing the market before the USDT dominance ran up, which in turn dumps crypto and Bitcoin. And when I brought it up on the channel, this is now going back a couple of months, people didn't really want to believe it. And now it's been happening. And we saw multiple signals added on top of that. You had the 3-day rule for Bitcoin from that top. We have seen the lower highs form. We've seen low volume tests on the way up. And I also talked about that on X yesterday. So if you're following along, definitely go and do that. That's basically back to this post. And right now we're in the midst of another retest of that 4.2%. And you know that this has been a very, very critical level for USDT to either break down from completely, decisively, or continue to hold above and then go and retest 4.6, 4.8 again, which would be a pretty dire position for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. You'd see a lot of that money flow out of it, and you'd probably get that reset that we're looking for right here in the fear and greed index, for this thing to get back down to that neutral. So yesterday's video, I looked at this bar as possibly being a bit of an exhaustion to the downside. That's what gave Bitcoin and cryptos that move to the upside. And then we've seen a total 180 turnaround, now testing that 4.2%. Again, within a trading range, the next critical area, 4.2%, to either overcome and you'll see cryptos drop, or get rejected and come back under this diagonal as well. So somewhere around 4% level. You want to see that over the next 24 hours. A break back underneath that level, closes under there, would be good short-term stuff for Bitcoin and cryptos. And it could continue to work on the move to the downside, eventually, hopefully breaking through that 3.7 to 3.8%. So that takes me over to ETH and the altcoins. Here we are. Sol, Sui, XRP, and ETH. I forgot to write there. ETH was just above the 50%, got rejected. The levels to the downside to watch, roughly $3,100. But we know from ETH's previous moves that it can do further corrections, still hold up relatively well, and then start to work its way higher. So $2,800 still there as a support level, and then all the way back to $2,100 to $2,400. Now, there is a massive, massive piece of hopium here. You want to see it? Hit the like button. So Solana's weakness has also stemmed from the rule here at the top. We got a double top at $260, $264, and here is your 3-bar rule. It happened on the daily and it happened on the weekly chart. And you've seen this extended move to the downside. Overall, it still seems like Solana can hit new fresh prices. It can go up past 260. I know it seems stupid. People think, well, that's obvious. No, it's not always obvious, especially when you have some pretty significant signals that are showing up at all-time highs, at a double top, so on and so forth, right? But here is your 1, 2, 3 days, or 3 bars down in this case. Yes, that is green, lower highs, lower lows. That's what we're looking at here. And you've got this first lower swing, weekly lower swing top in play. Can it go down from here and still remain bullish? Yes. I'll take my longer term outlook chart. This one here is the short term chart, so I'll keep it on the daily for us. It did get rejected at 50%, so it's probably gonna have to come back, test roughly around 195, 187. But for the longer term here on the weekly, the 50% levels to the downside. Remember, this is long term. Doesn't have to happen, but it still remains in a bullish structure, is $138. That's it right here. So that's right at those lows, and it's also the 50% extension off this double top. As I said, it doesn't need to happen, but Even if it does, probably going to freak everyone out. It's still in a strong position only if it breaks down from about 110 to 140. So these lows here, that's probably where you need to get out of your positions. For now, things are still above those levels and relatively, much higher above those levels at this point. So watch it on a daily basis here if it does begin to break down from there. Otherwise, it's still in a strong position. The first key level to that downside, 175 to 190 in that zone. That's the low and the 50% level. SUI has closed underneath that previous top. So that's $4.95. And when this signal came up last time, this market dumped nearly 80% and it was down for months. So here is the top. Here is the bottom in August. 131 days, 79% from that top. It looks very eerily similar. There's the top. It broke higher, a couple of closes above, broke underneath, rejected as it came back above that level or tried to test that top, and then basically crashed all the way down for that next, 4 to 5 months. The total time it ran up from the low to the top was 160 days. This time, it did almost exactly the same thing. Is it over? No. It could be very, very early, and when you're very, very early in a turn, there's more chance of it being wrong. The later in the move, then the higher chance of being right there is. That's the way the market works. So we got 154 days from the low to this current move. We have the top. We have the market closing. This time it got 3 closes above before it broke underneath. So it could still be on for a support here and then a break back above. That's what you want to see in the next few days. But if you get a rejection here, then that's working out very similar to what happened in the past. So just watching the signals here. Doesn't mean that it's over, doesn't mean it's game end, right? It's just watching whether you do find some weakness, come back in at $4.90 to $5, and you start to see closes to the downside. Then I would start to look at previous support levels for this market to hold up. The major one here is at around $2.90 to $3. XRP also holding up relatively well, still underneath the short-term 50% at $2.40. The major one is at $1.60. And before I hear that XRP people get too crazy, it does correct, even in bull markets, 50 to 70% from those tops. And here is one going back to 2021, after the SEC stuff, 52%, big move to the upside. So you still have multiples that you could claim there. And the one I want to reference mostly is back in the day, the first time round, when I first got into XRP back here in April or March of 2017, that was a time when things were very, very bubbly. Unlike, not really like today, but they were very bubbly back then. So just taking a reference there, 60%. And yes, some will say, well, the market cap's way different. Of course it's different. That's fine. But you can still get 50, 60, 70% corrections. ETH does it, and ETH has a bigger market cap. So just pay attention to those. It doesn't mean that the cycle is over. It just means if you're an XRP army lover, you might have some better entry opportunities at those prices. So that's only going to occur if you see a breakdown of the 190 and the 50% level at 160. Otherwise, things are looking relatively sweet. Back to ETH and the mega hopium that I have for us here, if you've hit the like button, is if ETH is able to survive above, let's call it 2,800 because that's the previous tops, and it's just under the 50% level. So we don't really want to see closes under there, but it can touch underneath those levels. Spike underneath, close back above, and remain in this zone. Here are your 50% levels off the double top as well. That's back around here at the 3,000, 3,100. Basically, find support here. Eventually, if it breaks through, you've had one top. You could either class this potentially as a second and a third. We could be on for that 4th time breakout. So we're looking for strength first. That's why I'm giving you the support levels for ETH at this point. Even if we do see some further downside here, the stock markets go a bit crazy. But if ETH is able to hold up here, and then when things come back, we start to break higher, that could mean some pretty serious moves to the upside. I'm very excited for that. We've got to get through this period. Got to hold above 2,800. At least in the short term here. Breaks above, once it gets above $4,100, you only have a couple left, 42 and 4,800, 5,000. Then we're on for sort of 53, 6,000, maybe even 7,000 USD. So it's looking relatively all right if it can hold this level for now. That's your hopium. Like, subscribe. I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Keep calm, remain patient. Join us over on X if you want to get some daily updates. I'll see you back at the next video. Till then, take care and peace out.